Sorry, it took me a minute. Mayor and Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to be presenting to you kind of a yearly report of Public Works for the last year. We love these opportunities. I'm sure you guys are excited. They're in there. Okay. We'll just go for it. So just a little bit about what we do. Public Works, as all of you know, is in charge of streets, stormwater, and water for Kaysville City. That's kind of a simplified version. There's a few other things that we take care of, but in a nutshell, that is it. Our streets department, we're in charge of, obviously, general road maintenance, which has been a topic of interest as of late. All signage on streets, tree trimming, water meter reading, curb painting, etc. Then our stormwater department, we manage over 100 miles worth of storm and land drain pipes. And we are in charge of the SWIP requirements with the state and federal government, the MS4 and general permit requirements as well as water meter reading. The water department is comprised of our culinary system, tanks, hydrants, valves, pipes, etc. Also over 150 miles of pipeline in that system. Heavily regulated. What we do is in response to requirements put on us by the State Division of Drinking Water, and with them also water meter reading. How we do it, we have those three main departments staffed as such. Streets has 4 full-time staff, and the funding is comprised of Class C funds. At times it can be the active transportation option, the road fee, which isn't in effect right now, but I believe the ordinance was passed last council meeting. And then all other operations that are non-streets related are general fund for the streets department. Stormwater, 3.5 full-time staff. It's 3.5, not because we're being politically incorrect, but one of the staff members in stormwater is also in charge of garbage cans, delivering those to residents, fulfilling work orders. And the funding for those operations is from the stormwater fee. The water department, we have 5 full-time staff, and that's probably the most regulated department of Public Works, and the funding for that comes from the sale of culinary water. Some exciting things this last year. We had a really great year for streets projects. I see the mayor smiling. I'm guessing that's at the picture here. In addition to our streets projects, which were rehab and preventative maintenance, our individual staff placed over 2,000 tons of asphalt materials in potholes. And I think the biggest focus has been trying to further our vision of methods and materials that we use in regards to roads. You can see here the picture. One of our staff members, Cody Thompson, received an award from the Utah Asphalt Pavement Association for the work that he's doing within UAPA to further the discussion and advance the methods and materials that we and other cities use. Stormwater has been focused largely on using less invasive methods of maintaining the system. Cast in place pipe projects where we're not having to excavate to replace a damaged pipe. I've got an example back here of a blockage, a mineral deposit in a pipeline that we removed rather than replacing the pipe. We were able to bring in a contractor to assist us to remove that blockage. And then management of SWIPs for 60 to 70 sites. That's a large part of what we're doing right now. Water, we had our tri-annual inspection from the state, and that was comprised of 2 state staff, 3 county staff, the health department, and then our water staff participated in that. And what they do, it's just kind of a white glove inspection. Let's come in, let's see how it's functioning, how you're taking care of your responsibility to the residents of Kaysville. Had a good encounter with them, but did get some recommendations from them, particularly with flushing hydrants, inspections, valve exercising, etc. That previously we hadn't been doing as much as we'd like to be doing. This previous year, we've had a large focus on Success Framework, which I think has been talked about by other departments. Success Framework, if I understand correctly, is an initiative from the governor, from Governor Herbert, where his recommendation, for lack of a better word, to state departments is we'd like you to find increases in efficiencies. And I think it was 20% is the goal. I could be incorrect there, but we'll talk a little bit more about that here in the coming slides. And then just overall, trying to increase our focus on safety for personnel, for residents, etc. So this is currently our Success Framework kind of flow chart of work as it pertains to water meters. That's what we decided to focus on. You can see over here, Success Framework is an equation which gets me excited as an engineer. I love variables. So you've got your Q times T over OE. So Q in our case here is the percent of the system comprised of smart meters or digital meters, we've referred to them as, which are these Neptune, the T10 meters. T is the total number of metered connections, that's both residential and commercial in Kaysville, which is about 8,000 between the two. And then OE, the operating expense, is the man hours just from my department spent reading meters each month during the summer. That does not include having to go out on rereads. So as you can see here, this process is kind of cumbersome. It takes about 4 weeks to finish the initial read of the city. We do that every month during the summer for about 7 months. And right now as we plug in, so Q sub C, T sub C, and OE sub C, we get a value of 3.89. There aren't units to that. We're not concerned about the units. We just want everything to be consistent here as we're comparing it to the future. So that future, obviously, we don't have a crystal ball that we can see exactly what it's like, but we've tried to be very conservative in our estimates here. You can see that the work process is visually quite more efficient. The values and inputs for those variables, so previously it was 3.89. Again, being incredibly generous and conservative, we come up with a value of 444, which is an increased efficiency of 11,000%. I was hesitant to put that number on there because 11,000 looks like a number of that is not possible. But going from utilizing 8 to 10 of my personnel that are not only water but are streets and stormwater, and sending them out for about 3 weeks, and they're spending at least 6 hours a day of their time collecting that information. That doesn't even include, if we find errors, if somebody wrote a number down wrong, having to go back out to where it can be done in an hour or a couple of days if there is an issue. Helps you to understand why there's such an increase in the efficiency there. This is last council meeting as we had a resident ask about return on investment. We want to provide that information, and this is it. I can't give exact, quantitative values of, this many dollars are saved. A lot of it is not quantitative but qualitative of, hey, we now have the ability for our streets crews to focus more on streets issues. Our stormwater crew now has the ability to focus more on stormwater issues. And water is focusing more on the requirements from regulations rather than spending this time out, 2 people in a crew reading meters. And I've brought with me, is it kosher to do show and tell?
Absolutely.
So
It's highly encouraged. Of course.
Pass this around first. It's not gross or contaminated.
I feel like it's gross.
So this is a meter that we just replaced a few weeks ago. It's a Badger meter that was manufactured in 1960. And last week, as we discussed, we try to shoot for a service life of at least 20 years for a meter. This meter's been in the ground since 1961. And the efficiencies of the meter are affected. It starts to decrease what it's able to count. We've been generous to say, well, maybe they're 80% efficient, but as we've talked with industry professionals, a meter like that is maybe more like 60% efficient. So again, I have an old meter, awesome to get free water, but we don't really want to encourage that. So what we're wanting to do is you flip the lid on that, you can see that there's just a dial that requires personnel to go out, open up the meter box, then flip the lid, read the number out to somebody in the truck, they write it down. That number is brought back to City Hall on a piece of paper. It's given to Holly in the billing department. Holly then types that into the computer, and if Holly notices, gosh, this seems really off, it doesn't seem right, or, I think the reading this time is lower than it was last time, there's been a mistake, she'll send us back out. And that process, the rereads, is at least another week with those maybe 6 to 7 people this time. So our goal is we want meter reading to be done all the time, to be done quickly, to be done accurately. Right now we only read 7 months out of the year, so in the winter we're not reading meters. We're guessing as we send bills out. It's not a good idea in my opinion. It's more than just a guess. There's some education to that, but sometimes we have to true it up of, well, we estimated more, we estimated less, and we have to then come back to that with residents later. So this is something that we've been focused on for the last 3, 4, 5 years, well before I was here. This is an easy target. It's low-hanging fruit. We've been budgeting these funds and largely have gone unexpended. So we want to use these funds now. Let's focus on replacing these meters, get it up to date, streamline the process, and safeguard the resource, that water, and also the time of personnel and staff. So yeah, that's the majority of my presentation. I guess if you guys have any questions.
Okay. Councilmember Garn.
Thank you. So this is a monthly amount, the 576 hours for
Hours per month.
is per month. So even if you subtract the 18 under OEF, then you've got 558 or something like that hours savings.
Hours that aren't being expended, and that's just within my department. This 18 hours that you see right there, again, talking to Holly and talking with the vendor, we think it's more like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Click the button, the data starts to come in. Holly will still review that, and the software will help her review that. 18 was hey, worst case scenario, if we're having to send somebody out and we don't want to do all the billing until we know for a fact everything is 100% comfortable, we'll send somebody out, maybe do some maintenance on a meter, or is there something with a data collector that's kind of funky? But again, we think it's more along the lines of 1 to 3.
So, and granted, I guess some of the employees that are now spending a lot of their time, I mean, basically you've got, what, 3, roughly speaking, if you round it down a little bit to 6,000 hours a year, that's 3 full-time employees worth of time
Right.
to do this process that you're saving. And you would probably repurpose those employees to focus more on maintenance tasks and what they're, stick to the netting or.
Yeah, so as stated, the IPS, that state inspection, they came in and said, you know what, you're doing a good job, but there are some things that you guys probably need to be focusing on in addition to the bare minimum. So those hours give us the ability to chase those things. As we look at this focus on safety, as we have staff and personnel that are down in confined spaces, we're required to have somebody act as a whole watch and stand there, and they don't focus on anything else. They don't hand tools to people. They watch the individual. So as we're looking at this, we need more hours to get done what we need to get done. As a kid, my dad would say there's not enough hours in the day, and I never really understood that as a kid. Like, well, there's plenty of hours. I have a great time. It's awesome. But it makes sense more so now, the older I've got in life. So,
and one follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
So it's just a very rough return on investment calculation, but whatever the right number of employees are with new requirements or better maintenance, higher quality in the formula, however those hours are repurposed, the fact of the matter is, if you look at it from an opportunity cost perspective, that's 3 full-time FTEs. And if you looked at them fully costed, with benefits and everything, and again, just guessing, very conservatively, I guess, if you were to say that was $80,000 a year per employee times 3, you've got $240,000. There's your cost savings, your opportunity cost savings, whether it's repurposed or not, applied elsewhere. And that would be your benchmark for a rough return on investment.
yeah, potentially. One thing we do know is we've estimated, we believe we're spending at least $11,500 a month just on salary, wage for employees to go out and read these meters. So eliminating that as quickly as possible, getting these meters installed 1 year instead of 2-3 years, eliminating that expenditure, not only the money, the money's going to be spent, but can we spend those wages, those hours, as you're talking about, the equivalent of full-time employees, on other tasks?
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor, can I ask?
Yes, Councilmember Hanson.
Just a quick question on the Neptunes that you already put in. They were staggered, weren't they? Not all at one time.
So what they started doing is they spent about 6 to 7 months identifying how many or what meter do we want to go with. They then identified the Neptune, and then they started assigning crew. Hey, one of your tasks throughout the day is going to be here and there installing new meters. Largely that was in response to Holly saying, we've got an issue with this meter, it doesn't look like it's reading accurately. Okay, let's go out and replace it with the Neptune. Or in the case of east of Fairfield, I think there were some neighborhoods that we said, okay, let's focus on this neighborhood as we have time available, and let's install these new meters. So staggered as far as time, yeah, it hasn't been a, all hands on deck, let's get this done right away. It's been over the course of about 3 or 4 years.
Okay. And the reason I was asking, do we still keep the historical usage on each of those? I wonder, again, if anybody asks for ROI, you could get some, pre-post, especially where you talk about the ineffectiveness of the I mean, generally speaking, could you do some of those? Do we still have that data from?
Yeah, I believe we maintain that data
Okay.
as part of the billing operation. I don't know for exactly how long, but yeah,
There might be some data there to look at. Okay.
Okay,
10 years.
10 years of data. Good. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Barber?
Yeah, one last question, and this may be more for the budget part of our meeting, but with the so much talk about roads and the additional money that you'll have to put into roads this next year, will we be hiring additional people to do that? Will we just be accommodating it? How will that affect your department?
For roads? Yeah, so last year we had requested an additional full-time employee to try and meet the requirements in the streets department. We've kind of retooled the approach and have found other ways to try and get those needs met without acquiring an additional full-time employee. So the streets department currently gives 2 people a month for meter reading, where they already only have 4. So instead of streets impacting water, it's now water releasing the impact on streets.
So all of the additional funds that we're sending to your department for roads will all go to materials?
So other departments don't send funds other than wages. If somebody's working for the water department reading meters, then the water fund would be paying that wage.
Mayor, may I?
Yes,
I
please.
think what Councilmember Barber's asking is we're proposing to put in 3.75, is that the number, $1 million into roads. That dollar amount is, are we adding more people with that dollar amount?
Oh, no, that's 100% what is going onto the ground, the
The
finished
materials,
product.
okay. Excellent,
Yeah.
thank you, that is my
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
Right.
you're fine.
And
Great.
also another good point that you're bringing up is that the funds that are for water are specifically for water.
Yeah.
And we now have a road enterprise fund, and anything that goes into that stays with the roads. So even though you oversee all those different responsibilities, the money that goes into that stays strictly with those.
Yeah, so we try and keep those as separate as possible. There are some instances where if we have a water line replacement like we're doing on Market Street in Borough, the water is the reason that some of that street is being impacted. So we want water to bear some of that cost. But otherwise, water funds stay in water, stormwater funds stay in stormwater, and street funds stay in streets.
All right, very good. And Councilmember Hanson?
Just to follow up, when you said 100% of the money, we will contract out some of those roads.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah,
some
so
will go, but it's a
The
contracted
dollars
fee.
themselves aren't in the pavement, but the dollars themselves are 100% going towards
Getting
what
the
is
pavement
ending
there.
up
Yeah.
in.
With the
pavement.
cost of, the contracted labor, but we're not
Exactly.
hiring new, that's a bid out price, and, okay.
Correct.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
All right, and Councilmember Kern?
Just one follow-up, because I realized I won't get a chance to ask this question if the other item stays in the, for the water meter stays in the consent realm or on the agenda. So I'm wondering, how long will it take to get to 100% in the community, 100%?
Transition to those newer
Yeah.
meters. So on the PO that we've submitted on the consent agenda, we believe that it can be closer to a year and a half process versus a 2 to a 3 year process if we were trying to do that in-house.
That's fast, thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, any other questions? Okay.